Today I'm going to share with you 3 easy ways to practice mindfulness while you're healing your trauma. But before we get to those practices, we're going to talk about what mindfulness really is, how it helps break trauma patterns, and how it can actually rewire your brain for healing. And so if you've been looking for a way to feel more grounded, more in control, and more peace with your past, you're in the right place. So let's dive right in. So what exactly is mindfulness? You've probably heard the term thrown around a lot because it's a big buzzword in the self-help space. But mindfulness is really just about being fully present in the moment without judgment. It's a way to connect to the now instead of being caught up in the past or worrying about what might happen in the future. And so when we experience childhood trauma, we get stuck in those old patterns. Our bodies and our minds might be reacting to situations based on those old wounds. And then this leads us to patterns of behavior like overreacting to small things, feeling stuck, or even numbing ourselves to our emotions. And so I was often running the pattern of overreacting to small things. And so the example that comes to mind immediately is that I had spent all of this time organizing and redecorating my daughter's playroom. And my husband was helping to clean up, and he just started putting toys in any old bucket. And if I hadn't spent all this time organizing the playroom, that would have been fine. But it wasn't in this moment because I had put all of these cute little picture labels on each bucket because my girls couldn't read at this time. They were like maybe 1 and 4. And so I wanted all of the Barbies in the Barbie bucket, all the Legos in the Lego bucket, and all of the play food in the play food bucket. And I had pictures for each bucket, and my husband was just throwing stuff everywhere. And I was so angry with him. I literally felt like my head was going to pop off my shoulders. It was like the anger character from Inside Out. And so I looked at him, I was like, if you do not put that toy back in the right bucket, I'm going to break your fingers. And he looked at me and I was like, you heard me, I'm going to break your fingers. And I would have never, ever, ever put my hands on my husband or even attempted to break his fingers. But that was such an overreaction on my part because at the end of the day, did it really matter if the Barbies were with the Barbies and the Legos were with the Legos and the food was with the food? It didn't, because the next morning, my kids were just going to dump all the buckets again and we were going to have the same mess that we had then. So he was actually just intentionally trying to be helpful. And I created this meaning around the situation that didn't even exist. And so growing up, I often felt like I wasn't seen and I wasn't heard and I wasn't validated. And so in this moment, I attached that feeling from when I was a little girl to this situation as an adult, which was so not the case. And so I really just felt like he didn't appreciate me because I had spent hours and hours and hours getting these things organized and decorating the playroom so it was picture perfect for our kids. And then he just came along and destroyed all that. Not really, but it felt like that in the moment. And so it also said to me like that he thinks his time is more important because he can focus on what he needs to do, but he can't focus and maintain what I've taken the time to do. And so all of these things that I had created, this belief about the situation, was the farthest thing from the truth. He was just in autopilot mode, cleaning up, thinking he was being helpful, and he wasn't prepared for me to lash out and completely overreact at his lack of awareness for labels on buckets. And so it really didn't matter. I really didn't. And so really the great thing about mindfulness is that it helps us break that cycle by teaching us to pause, breathe, and observe what's happening inside of us without reacting automatically. But there's also another little piece of the puzzle. It also helps us to observe what's going on around us without reacting automatically. So if I had been mindful in that moment, I would have been able to notice that I was getting angry and frustrated. I would have felt that. I always feel it in my chest. My heart starts racing. And then I could have said, oh, okay, I'm feeling that feeling. Let me take a minute. Let me evaluate the situation. Let me think about how I want to handle this instead of lashing out and threatening to break someone's fingers. And so when we experience trauma, especially in childhood, it doesn't live in our memories. It does, but it also gets stored in our body and our mind. And our nervous system becomes wired for survival mode. It's always on alert for danger, even when there is no danger there. And so that was what was happening in that moment with my husband. I was totally in survival mode. But the good news is that mindfulness can help us rewire those trauma responses. And when we're mindful, we can start to notice these patterns and choose a different response. And here's the fascinating part. Mindfulness can actually change the structure of your brain. So studies show that practicing mindfulness can increase activity in the prefrontal cortex. That's the part of the brain that's responsible for decision making and emotional regulation. And it decreases the activity in the amygdala, which is where your fear and anxiety responses live. And so what does this mean for healing your trauma? It means that over time, mindfulness is going to help you move out of that survival mode that you've been in for way too long. And you're going to move into a space where you feel safe, you feel calm, and you feel like you're able to make thoughtful choices rather than reacting out of fear or hurt or anger. And so let's talk about how you can bring mindfulness into your healing journey. There are a few simple practices that you can do, and they're going to make a big difference for you. So practice number 1 is mindful breathing. You're just going to take a moment each day to focus on your breath. You're going to feel the air as it enters and leaves your body. And this is really going to help you ground in the present moment and calm your nervous system. So it's just an inhale and an exhale. You can also do body scanning. So you're going to close your eyes and you're going to slowly scan your body from your head to your toe. You're going to notice any areas of tension or discomfort without trying to change them. You're just going to observe. And this is a great way to tune into where your trauma might be stored in your body. So when I do a body scan, I start at the top of my head. I notice any sensations that I feel on my scalp. I move to my face. I notice if my eyebrows are furrowed, if my jaws are clenched. I move to my neck and my shoulders, and I notice if there's any tension there. Then I check in on my back. I check in on my chest and my stomach. I check in on my arms, my wrists, my hands. Then I move down to my hips, and I move down to my legs, my knees, my shins, my ankles, and my feet. And the third mindfulness practice that you can use is just a gratitude check-in. And you can do this in the morning when you wake up, or you can do this at the end of each day, but you're just going to take a minute to think of one thing that you're grateful for. And it could be something so small like a warm cup of coffee or a nice text message from a friend. But when you practice gratitude, it really helps you shift your focus from the pain to the healing. I like to do 3 things I'm grateful for in the morning and 3 things that I'm grateful for in the evening. And so the beauty of mindfulness is that it's not about fixing yourself or erasing your trauma. It's really about learning to be present with yourself, even when things feel difficult. And over time, this practice strengthens your emotional resilience. And you're going to start to notice that you're less reactive, more in tune with your emotions, and you're going to be better able to move through the challenges without feeling overwhelmed. And so if you're on your trauma healing journey, I just want to remind you that it's a process. Healing takes time, and mindfulness is a tool that you can use every step of the way. And so the more you practice, you're creating new patterns, and you're going to notice that you're not stuck in those old patterns anymore. And patterns that are going to be created for you when you practice mindfulness are going to be grounded in peace, self-compassion, and really a sense of safety. So you're not going to have those patterns anymore that are grounded in fear, anxiety, or anger. And so if you're looking for more information on your healing journey, I suggest that you check out the video about confronting your past in order to have true healing.